Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm really excited to kick off the presentations today. I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that Caitlin will go more in depth, in particular give some examples as it relates to progressive. Okay, so one of the things I just wanted to kind of give a brief background of myself. I didn't necessarily, I wasn't born in Akron, but I certainly grew up in Akron. Moved here when I was 12 years old, and as you can see, I actually graduated from the Department of Marketing, and then went on to the dark side, Kent State. But I moved around and came back to Akron to lead some of the initiatives related to the marketing analytics here in the Taylor Institute, and in particular, the Department of Marketing, teaching our analytics courses. So you can go to the next. So one of the things as we talk about data science in general, wanted to see, okay, where do we fit in? How does it really all work? So I just kind of brought it into 4 different scenarios. And when you look at data science, you've got things like data engineering, machine learning, research and development, and then your marketing and communications. So as you look at all of those, you're really saying, data engineering these are the individuals that are putting your databases, the architecture, so database design, the back-end architecture, security and auditing, and then kind of how each of those fit in and how they've had actually fit in for years. So we joke around a lot that we've been doing analytics for years. It just wasn't with certain type of data. Machine learning, thinking about internal tooling, really looking into production quality and so on. Research and development, more of your lab director type of roles when you're thinking about really putting a psychology individual to try to understand really the scenario and more of the experimentation and data exploration. And then finally what we're going to focus on is the marketing side. So really being able to visualize the data, make insights based on the data, but also being able to give feedback. So kind of having that overall loop. So as we move on to the next slide, just one from the I guess the king of data visualization, Edward Tufte. When you think about it, a great visualization is really taking complex ideas and then communicating them with clarity, precision, and efficiency, but it takes a lot of work, right? So it's really a difficult process. So I broke it down into a couple of different slides, and then these are the things that we teach our students. So Caitlin is going to go ahead and talk in particular, telling a story with data and then give some examples, but I'm just gonna say, okay, these are the different things that we teach our students, and then she's gonna talk about from the perspective how they do it in the corporate environment. So when you thinking about your audience, right? So I always tell students you might have 2 different presentations depending on the type of audience you have. So if you're really presenting to the executives, you've got to think about the type of things they want to know. So they're really quick insights, significant conclusions. But if you're really talking to someone that's an expert within the field, you want to show them the correlation matrix. You want to show them the regression matrix. You want to show them less storytelling, but more so of the detail. And then got a couple of the other there, just really focused on, depending on the type of your audience, it depends on the type of content you'll have. So a couple of other things that I wanted to make a note before we go ahead and go to Caitlin. One is finding compelling narrative, right? So even if you're just doing exploratory data analysis, establishing those relationships and finding insights is important for the conveying information. But even if you're doing the exploratory analysis, it's important to convey some type of a narrative. Avoiding bias, and I want to mention this because it's not necessarily just the bias of saying, I'm just going to tell a story that I want to say, but it's also really very unintentional bias because you think the data. So Caitlin in particular is going to talk about how to really avoid that bias from the understanding your data. So being able to understand how it was structured and so on. And then thinking about all of the data. So what do we do with outliers, missing values, and so on. And then spending more time on editing and improving visualizations rather than creating them. So as you go on, so one of the, I'm really excited when Caitlin and I started thinking about this presentation, what really it's going to be about. We talked a lot about the different data visualization and kind of her expertise in digital analytics. So I'm really excited to introduce her. She leads a team of digital analysts and specializes in analytics implementation across all parts of Progressive. I'm excited for two reasons. One, she's an expert within this field, but also two, Progressive in this organization that's a leader within the data-driven marketing environment, not only necessarily from utilizing data for advertising strategy effectiveness, but also for being a leader in analyzing data to price its policies in real time. They're leaders in everything that I teach my students. So I always mention that although you might not necessarily go into a analytics field, you truly need to understand the environment. So as you'll be faced with making decisions based on data. So you may be a content marketer, but you still need data in order to make decisions. So the ability to look for patterns and trends of large data sets allows you to make better informed decisions, regardless of the position you are in. And that's exactly what Progressive does. So they did that by implementing Hadoop and Tableau within their organization that enables their teams to actually review months worth of online advertising data in a very short amount of time. And Caitlin is really instrumental in that overall implementation of this on a daily basis. So I also teach a graduate customer relationship management course, and in this course, we spend a good amount of time discussing, well, not necessarily just how to please your customers, but how to minimize bad customers. So in this course, I always use a Harvard Business Review article that discusses Progressive's pricing based on pricing of competitors' policies as well. So the article discusses that if Progressive sees the person is a good customer, and so likely to be low risk, or based on the data that you provide in the quote and some of the consumer customer report that they have, Progressive will lower its own prices to beat competitors. But if they see that a person is high risk customer, and they're unlikely going to be profitable for the company, they actually raise prices and make the competitors appear cheaper, and this method sends the bad customers to competitors, and Progressive stays profitable. I did not get this from Caitlin. This case is from 2015, so I'm not sure how much that has changed. Besides this, Progressive is a very successful company that has made large investments in its analytics team and has truly set them apart from the competition. I could go on talking about my admiration for these various initiatives, but you'd rather probably hear from Caitlin. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Caitlin Marvin from Progressive.